Now we come to the debating theory, which we had briefly seen earlier. Why debating devices are essential for liberation. Because Nyaya arose in an environment of constant debate and deliberation. So it developed detailed tools for arguing, refuting, and defending its doctrines. So these are not merely academic because even a seeker of moksha must be aware of them in order to protect right view against the clever opponents. The list of views, as we have already seen earlier, Tark, Nirnay, Vaad, Jalp, Vitand, Hetva, Bhasa, Chala, Jati, and Nigrasthan. If you're directly, listening to this, let me summarize what we have talked about earlier. Tark is the critical deliberation, which is the hypothetical reasoning. It's not a separate Brahman, it's an oscillation of thought to test a hypothesis by seeing if an alternative supposition leads to contradictions. And the purpose is to discern the real nature of anything about which we are in doubt. Then we have Nirnay. Nirnay is the settled conclusion. It is reached after doubt and deliberation. And Nirnay is the state where the mind firmly accepts one notion and rejects other as implausible. Then we have the three kinds of debate, Vad, Jalp, and Vitand. Vad is the honest philosophical discussion where both the sides put forward thesis, they put forward their reasons, and the aim is truth, not just the victory. Jalp is the contentious wrangling. Each side uses reasons to defeat the other. There is a lot of rejoinder, quibbling, and point scoring. Then we have Vitand, which is the purely destructive criticism. The opponent does not offer any positive thesis in this, much like the debates, current political debates. Each side only tries to refute or to show inconsistencies in the other doctrines. Then we have some fallacies of region, Hetva Bhasa, Savya, vi- Vichar, Viruddha, Prakaran Sama, or Siddha Sadhan, and Sat Pratifaksh, Kalatit. Savya Vichara means erratic, Viruddha is contradictory, Prakaran Sama is arguing what is already proved or just repeating the thesis. Sat Pratifaksh is, counterbalanced by an equally strong opposite reason. Kalatit is which is mistimed or the opponent or the example doesn't match. Let's see again. Sub-vichar is being erratic or irregular. That is, some hetu can prove the opposite conclusions. Sound it is eternal because no, it is intangible like Ātman. And also sound is non-eternal because it is intangible like cognitions. So since the hetu occurs in both eternal and non-eternal things, it is unreliable. And some, later Nyaya splits the Sabha into uh, Sadharan, which is too common, which occurs in both Sapaksh and Vipaksh. Example, mountain is fiery because it's an object of knowledge. Now, the fact remains that all things are object of knowledge. Then we have Asadharan, which is too restricted. It is found only in Paksh. For example, sound is eternal because it has the nature of sound. Now, there is no other instance where the Hetu can be tested. So, it's a fallacy, right? And third is the uh, which is anupasamharin, which is unsumming or doesn't cover all the cases. Everything is non-eternal because everything is an object of knowledge. So in this, there is hetu in every case. So there is no contrast class where the sadhya fails. So, uh, so much like, currently we have falsifiability. So this can never be falsified, right? So Hetu is there in uh, every case. Then we have Viruddh or contradictory, where Hetu actually proves the negation of this Sadhya. For instance, when we say sound is eternal because it is produced, uh, but we know that whatever is produced is non-eternal. Then we have Prakaran Sama or Siddha Sadhana, which is tautology or begging the question, which reason simply repeats the thesis in different form. For example, we say sound is non-eternal because it lacks the quality of eternality. That is just tautology, right? And related type is sadhyasam. In sadhyasam, the hetu itself needs to be proved. For example, we say shadow is a substance which because it has motion. Now, it is debatable whether shadows have motion or not. Then we have kalatit or inopportune or mismatched example. That is, the example does not agree in time or circumstance with the fact. There is a mismatch. For example, if you write sound is eternal because it is the result of contact of stick and drum, just as color is eternal, although it is manifested by contact of light and object. But the thing is not true, right? Because color is not produced by contact. Color pre-exists in the object and is merely revealed by the light, but the sound is actually produced by the stick drum impact. Therefore, the analogy fails. The example and Paksh are not really similar. Then we have Sat Pratipaksh, which means counter being counterbalanced. In this, there is an equally strong contrary hetu available. Uh, for instance, we say sound is eternal because it is audible, versus sound is non-eternal because it is produced. Now, both the hetus seem to apply, and the vyaptis cannot be reconciled. So the argument is undecisive. Then we have asiddha, which is unproved or unreal middle. So hetu doesn't really exist or does not exist where it is supposed to. In this, we have three subtypes. First one being ashray siddh. Here, the locus itself is unreal. For instance, when we say locus of the sky is fragrant because it is like other lotuses. Now, there is simply no sky lotus. So, what are you talking about? And second is the swarup siddha, which is the alleged characteristic is impossible for that subject. For instance, when we say sound is a quality because it is visible, but sound can never be visible. The third is the Vyapti Viparya Siddha. In this, the supposed concomitance fails. For example, we say wherever there is fire, there is smoke. But red hot iron has fire, but it doesn't have smoke. Only fire with green wood in a constant fashion has smoke. The last one being Badhit, which is opposite to experience. When we say a thesis is directly repugnant to the perception, uh, uh, very, uh, it's the easiest to detect. So if you say fire is not hot because it is a substance, because, Nyaya is very experience-based thing. So now perception itself shows fire is hot. So any reasoning which implies the opposite is badhit. Then chal, other debating tricks are chal, which is the intentional misrepresentation of the opponent's words to score a point. You intentionally, misinterpret the opponent's words to, score a point. So it is similar to the scarecrow or the straw man fallacy. Then we have jati, which is drawing spurious counter conclusions, sowing confusion rather, raising false issues. Uh, mm, uh, then we have nigrah sthan, which are the points of defeat. Now, these are the situations where the opponent is shown to be self-contradictory, inconsistent, or evasive, and it is at these points where the opponents can be declared defeated legitimately. Jayant in Nyaya Manjari opines that a teacher seeking moksha must master these devices in order to protect his own faith and that of his students. If the teacher cannot defeat clever opponents, students will obviously lose confidence and students will fall into error. Therefore, the Nyaya Sutras treat these debate tools as instrumental for spiritual progress. Uh, Now we'll have one final look at what is the Atma, what is the soul. So the opponents, the Charvakas and the Buddhists. So in Charvakas, there are two. There are some Dhurt Charvakas, which are the radical materialists. They deny existence of any soul. They say that consciousness and life are just products of bodily changes, like intoxication from wine, let's say. That impacts consciousness whether you have it or not. And then we have Shikshit Charvakas, who are a sort of milder group. They admit a kind of soul, but they say that it is destroyed at death. Then we have the Buddhists. Buddhists deny a permanent personal self. Buddhists accept only a series of momentary dharmas with no enduring, no Atma. Nyaya opposes all the three. Uh, we have seen earlier why body and self senses cannot be the self. In case you're directly listening to this, we'll explain it again. That Nyaya begins with an inference that consciousness, pleasure, pain, desire cannot belong to the body or senses. Therefore, they must inhere in some other entity, that is the soul or Atman. Because our bodies and sense organs are insentient, but we still experience knowing, feeling, and desires. And these qualities need a substratum, so there must be a substance distinct from the body and senses where they belong. So, Mimamsa claims that the self is known directly through self consciousness, but Nyaya is more conscious on this front. It says that we cannot rely solely on self consciousness because it can contain error. Now, if I claim that I am white, I am black, but I'm not talking about the self. I might think that I'm talking about the self, but the self has no color. Color is solely of the body, not of the Atman. So self-consciousness can, confuse the self and body. It is not infallible. So therefore, the existence of Atma must be uh, established by inference. It cannot be established by introspective perception. How is to be established by experience? By the same logic, right? Because there are experiences, cognition, emotion, and desire. These are gunas and they must adhere in a dravya. Drav is not body or senses because they themselves, are objects of knowledge. So we posit Atma is the real subject in which they inhere. And nature of the soul is described as eternal and all pervading. It is Vibhu. And there is, no direct production of Atma has ever been observed, uh, and nor has it ever been found to undergo destruction. So, by its own causal logic, Atman is unproduced and indestructible, it is eternal, and it is not located at one point in the body. Nyaya is Vibhu, it is all pervading. Atman does not travel with the body when we move, it exists everywhere at the same time. Now, but Atman's connections with a particular body, mind, or senses, they are special in a very given life. So the self is one and the same in all parts of the body, and the self or Atman is not spatially confined, and it is not annihilated with bodily change as well. And Nyaya also adds a moral or karmic argument. Because small children show pleasure and displeasure in their expressions, which cannot be due to memories of this life's experiences. And it also sort of justifies the inequalities of the world, why some people are born prosperous and some miserable. These are contingent on the different amounts of good and bad deeds the people have performed in the past lives. Had there been no continuing self, these inequalities would be meaningless chance. Therefore, it is very practical and reasonable to experience a continuing soul which carries the samskaras karma across lives, and you should not attribute everything to the blind luck. And this, is in line with the explanations on Adrist and the cosmic justice. Atman is the enduring bearer of karma, whose fruits are distributed in this and the future lives. Then we'll have a final look at the create, whether the world as a whole needs a creator, whether Ishwar exists. So the Jain and the atheist objection argues that, when we see individual things in the world produced and destroyed, right, some cause is there. But world as a whole has never come to being, or, it will never cease to be. Therefore, while particulars are effect, these small things, cosmos as a totality is not an effect. Therefore, it has neither beginning nor end. So it does not require a cause. Therefore, no creator is needed. So this Nyaya responds that the world is an effect like any other, because we see large scale changes like earthquakes and landslips, and from these destructive operations we might conclude that infer that the world is not eternal, but it is like the small changes, it is also the result of production and rearrangement of atoms. Now, the opponent, or the Jains and other atheists, might not accept literal beginning of the universe in time, but they should at least admit that the universe shows a definite order and arrangement, which is some Visheshtata. The way planetary systems and ecosystems are structured, there is a definite order and arrangement. Therefore, whenever we see things with ordered structure that are clearly effects, like a jug, then we naturally infer a designer or a maker, water, let's say. So, order plus being an effect is a mark of intelligent causation. The atheist might put forth a counter argument that the order of the universe is vastly different from the order of human small things like pots and houses. So how can you generalize from this to the whole cosmos? Nyaya's answer to this is uh, yes, each individual's case of order has its own uniqueness, own peculiarities. Fire in the kitchen is not the same as a large scale fire in a forest. But when we give a law like generalization, when we form a law where there is smoke, there is fire, we abstract from individual peculiarities and we consider fire in general and smoke in general. We don't care that the kitchen fire is slightly different from forest fire. We only care about the generic relationship, and that holds for both the cases. Therefore, we must see the generic relationship between the order and arrangement and the existence of an intelligent arranger. We shouldn't look at the specific quirks of each case. So, wherever there is a effect that exhibits order, there is a conscious designer. The cosmos is one such ordered effect. Therefore, there is a creator, Ishwar by inference. Now, once the existence of a creator is established, Nyāya-Vaiśeṣika describes what he is like. So, Ishwar and a potter have been compared. Just as the potter knows all the purpose of the jug he makes, in a similar vein, Ishwar knows all the purpose of the entire universe. Ishwar is omniscient, or he is sarvagya. Um, he knows all the things directly. Ishwar doesn't need memory or mind. Uh, he's always happy. Ishwar is, his will is eternal. He's unwavering. And Ishwar produces dissolution. He creates and sustains the world and protects and governs the world so that everyone reaps his or her own deeds' fruits in accordance with karma or or karma of beings. So Ishwar's will directs the universe and aligns the world's order with the moral order of the karma. And some Vidwans say that since we imagine persons as having body, uh, it's natural that we struggle to think of a very bodiless Ishwar. Now, if their arguments is to if this line of thought we accept, then if the association of bodies with Ishwar is indispensable for our conception, we should go ahead and consider the atoms themselves to be his body. So just like our self, Atman is itself bodiless, but it is connected with a body and through its will produces movement in that body. So Ishwar also, although he is bodiless, must be thought of as associated with the atoms. And by his will, by the will of Ishwar, the changes and movements of atoms occur. So, uh, so the important point here is that the Ishwar does not need a body as we do, but if we insist on attributing a body, it can be only be in a very metaphorical sense, in a very extended sense, meaning that the aggregation of atom he rules. Now, the world is full of sorrow and pleasure is a bait. This Nyaya admits that the world is mostly dukh, and the small pleasures we get are meant only to intensify bondage. They make us crave more and they keep us, tied to the samsara. And the wise never attach themselves to these pleasures. The wise regard them as ultimately uh, something leading to greater suffering. And the bondage of the world, the root cause is the mithya gyan or the false knowledge. What is this false knowledge? It is thinking of the body, senses, mind as I, as the self, and mixing the transient aggregates for the true I. And what is true knowledge then? True knowledge is the correct use of pramanas, perception, inference, testimony, comparison, and the padarthas of Nyāya-Vaiśeṣika to understand what really exists and in what relations. Once true knowledge of the self and other categories arise, in that case, false knowledge is annihilated, and so are the products of false knowledge like rag and dvesh, attachment and aversion. These, together with avidya or ignorance, forms the kleshas. As per yoga literature, kleshas are afflictions or doshas. So once these are destroyed, attachment, rag, dvesh, uh, avidya. So once avidya is destroyed, rag and dvesh also destroyed. So klesh and the doshas also get destroyed. Then Nyaya also adopts the yogic technique of pratipaksha bhavana. That is, whenever a pleasurable object attracts us, we should practice pratipaksha bhavana. We should think the exact opposite of our instinctive reaction. Now, suppose you see some pleasure draws you, right? So you remind yourself that this is in reality pain. It will lead to future suffering. You see some junk food there, which is very appealing for your tongues. You remind yourself that this is in reality pain. It will lead to future suffering. And when with this constant counter reflection, right knowledge will ultimately dawn and the object will cease to attract you. So when false knowledge is destroyed through such contemplations, attachment and ignorant clinging also disappear. With the destruction of attachment, what happens to karma then? So, so pravritti or actions done without attachment cannot bind. They do not generate new karmic results. So existing karmas will, one day or the other exhaust themselves. And when the desire cease, no new birth is taken. And with the end of rebirth, sorrow also ceases. So, but the view of liberation or mukti is very austere. In when you are emancipated, when mukti happens, the self is divested of all the qualities, not just of pain and pleasure, but also of consciousness, willing, feeling, knowledge, etc. And the self remains in its own inert nature or swarup. It's a kind of bare existence. So mukti is not a state of pure knowledge or bliss. Mukti is a state of perfect qualitylessness. And that's some texts might say that mukti is anand, it is bliss. Nyāya-Vaiśeṣika clarifies that phrase is only figurative. If we talk strictly, mukti is a negative state of absolute absence of pain. And this absence is, we loosely describe as happiness, but strictly speaking, it's a neutral, passionless condition. There is no pleasure, no pain, and no cognition. So the ideal is a quite featureless state of the self, which is freed from all the attributes that arise due to contact with the body or mind or senses or karma.